This was a couple days ago, I think. Dave Portnoy tweeted that Barstool would be seriously interested in
purchasing
in
buying the naming
rights for the Bills studio.
Yes, this is real.
Yeah, he said that they were, quote, very serious about buying the naming rights to the stadium.
Very, very serious, he even said. So I have a few good talking points on this, just because I've had this conversation previously as my laptop continues to freak out. Well, do you want to start it off, or do you want?
No, go ahead. It sounds like you got stuff to do.
Because
Yeah.
So I looked into it a lot. One of the big things is that I think it would be awesome. But Erie County has a clause in the fact that they own the stadium, saying that nobody can own the naming rights to the stadium that might pretty much in more legal terms it says it, but that would shed a negative light upon the county. And I think that Barstool as a company, as much as if you're really a true Barstool fan and aren't somebody that's just crazily easily offended, you know that their company isn't. Yeah. But you know what I mean? Yeah. They give just honest media. They say what the majority of people in the world think that a lot of people at this day and age will not say. So I'm a huge Barstool fan, but so I think that could, maybe interrupt negotiations between it. But what I will say is that Barstool as a company is now majority owned by Penn National Gaming. So Penn National Gaming is pretty much a gambling company, and I think that if they spun it that way, that Penn National Gaming could make a lot of money owning that stadium, and through Buffalo, continue to grow. People in Buffalo Barstool is the perfect fit. So if you're not going to be able to call it Barstool, calling it Penn National Gaming, still having a tie-in with Barstool, as well as now you have a gambling company, and this is something that happens a lot of times, especially in European soccer, we'll call it football, because that's what they call it, right? All of their facilities are affiliated with sportsbooks and have sportsbooks in their stadiums and arenas and field houses, whatever, and it's a huge revenue factor for them. And now that sports gambling is becoming more and more widely accepted and legalized, Key Bank Center did install a sports book through the Seneca Casino in there, and it's not quite a full-blown sports book, but if a company like Penn National Gaming came in to New Era and put stuff like that in there, you've been to Bills games, I think. I don't know if you have, but I've been to Bills games. They're crazy, and I've sat there and I've gambled at Bills games. They would make so much money from drunk idiots hammering the Bills, and then the Bills, whether they win or lose, they're going to win money off of what people think. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I think there's a lot of money to be made on both sides. If there's one thing that Barstool is good at, it's finding those sort of niche ways to make revenue, right? The High Nooners, right? Those are them. Those things.
I love the High. Well,
their merchandise.
So they're just affiliated.
Right.
They don't actually.
But I'm just saying, anything that they put their name on sells, and and all of their merchandise. They have. I don't know who does their merchandise or their marketing or whatever, but they come up with so much creative stuff, and they make a ton of money on it. So that would, right out the bat, it'd be huge. But you kind of said this. I think it's a match made in heaven, the Bills and Barstool. I think that it's so obvious to me as someone who I would say is a middle of the road football fan. I love watching the Bills. I don't know a ton about the NFL as a whole. I can't name a ton of players or anything like that. So from my point of view, it's so obvious to me that the Buffalo Bills have the best fans in the entire organization, and I've always felt that way.
In the NFL.
without a doubt.
I think so, too.
So obvious.
I mean, people will argue, but as far as sheer passion goes for a team that for so long hasn't been good, thing. Bills fans actually just they give a fuck, but they don't give a fuck. They will still be there.
I mean, it's literally ride or die. Like the Bills have been, have done so poorly for our entire existence, you and I, our entire lives.
Until as of more recent, yes.
Right, they're starting to turn around, obviously, but I'm just saying, speaking generally.
The process.
And the passion has never faltered. And Bills fans do the craziest stuff. And I think that more people in recent years are starting to recognize, Bills Mafia, and Barstool was a big part of that. They post a lot of Bills content. I wonder even if they post more Bills Bills fan content than any other fan content, maybe even across any sport.
Yeah, I mean, but that's the thing is like that the fan base of the Buffalo Bills plays direct. I mean, it really depends. It's going to come down to the legislation and if they're going to allow. Well, I guess I don't really know how it works, but from what I've seen and done a little bit of my own research, not just based off of like what I see on Twitter, is like
for sure
it's a gray area, but I think that it would be just. If you could call it Barstool Stadium, imagine like actual Bills merchandise with a Barstool logo on it.
How much money everybody would make, man?
Barstool would make. It would be stupid.
Unbelievable. We're talking numbers here that I can't even fathom.
And from like an ownership perspective, from like a sports business perspective, like people were so against, like, I know, not to bring it back to gambling, but people were so against gambling, and finally people in the sport industry were like, why are we against gambling when we could be making so much money off of it? Barstool is a company that a lot of people still kind of are iffy on, even though they're so big, and like, you would make so much money. You would make so much money. I don't know how much Barstool would have to pay to get the stadium to be. I don't know how much the naming rights cost. I don't remember exactly how much New Era had to pay, but I mean. And you're talking exclusive Barstool content at Barstool Stadium or Penn National Gaming Stadium, whatever they're going to call it, right? Like, you're just talking about Dave Portnoy is the king of content. That is why he is where he is today, because he doesn't care. He has given up his entire personal life pretty much to just make sure that wherever he is and wherever there's an event going on, there's just cameras at all times. Like, and he's just made millions of dollars off of it. So how is that not going to continue? How is that not going to be profitable? Being surrounded by Bills Mafia, people are lighting Christmas trees on fire in parking lots. Like, they're doing just absurd shit. Like,
it's just look. I think that what everything comes down to, as far as whether or not, if Barstool makes a bid, if that gets approved, I think that all comes down to straight up. There's this, like you said, there's this perception of Barstool as something that a lot of people don't agree with. And one, I think personally, I think that perception is completely misguided. But also, I think that just remove yourself, if you feel that way, just remove yourself from the situation for a second and look at that company. And look at Dave Portnoy and the decisions that he's made and what they've led to. If you bet against that guy and if you bet against that company, you're a fucking idiot. You are so stupid. Let's be honest. Let's be completely honest.
Have you ever seen?
Let's say that that things go as far as they can with this. Barstool is ready to buy the naming rights to the stadium, and it is up for approval against whoever needs to approve that. And then they decline it. It doesn't get approved. I guarantee you, within 10 years, Barstool is going to own a completely different stadium, affiliated with a completely different team, and it's going to be a great situation for them. So you can either miss out on it and regret it now, or you can go for it because it's going to happen whether you're on board or not.
They're going to do it somewhere. Like,
yeah, exactly.
Now that it's even a thought in their mind,
And
Yeah.
Buffalo is the best
No,
place for it.
Yeah,
It really is.
by far. Yeah. My laptop's freaking. Sorry to keep bringing it up, but it's driving me crazy because I'm trying to focus on one thing and I've got like Siri popping up in the corner. I'm like, what the fuck is going on? Last thing I'll say about it is exactly what you said. Dave Portnoy he is absolutely a narcissist. He's borderline a sociopath. Like, he's batshit crazy, but he's so good at what he does, and he's so committed to just making his, like, what he does with Barstool be so much better than anything that's ever been like that in that field. Like, have you ever seen the interview that he does where he talks about how he orders those custom bottles of champagne? Do you know what I'm talking about?
No idea.
In his office, on his desk, like, when the interview came out, he happened to have 3 of them at the time, and he didn't show the names, but he orders these custom bottles of, I believe it's Ace of Spades, like, expensive bottles of champagne. Sorry, Siri's just popped up on my screen 6 times while I tried to have that conversation. So I didn't even know. Can you hear me when I talk?
Yeah, I can hear you. You are not cutting out at all.
Okay, sorry.
Champagne.
Yeah, so he has these bottles of champagne. He custom orders them, and he gets the names of his enemies engraved in the bottles. And when he destroys his enemies, he drinks the bottle of champagne.
What?
And when I say destroy, it means like he like wants to run them to the ground. Like he
Yeah.
actually is a ruthless man. Like he doesn't ever want to see anybody like, you know, anything bad. But like as far as like their company goes, if you are a competitor of Barstool, he wants to drive you so far into the ground that you will never recover. And then he's gonna pop this $10,000 bottle of champagne with your name engraved on it and drink it right in your face. Like,
Man.
that's crazy.
Part of me wants to say that
But that's why he is where he is today.
genius. The other part of me wants to say that is some Stalin shit for sure. But I really like it. I really like that. Because
But if you look at how long he battled to get Barstool where it is, how long he was like
dedicated.
Actually like, you know what I mean? And now that he's so, I love it.
Me too.
It's like a motivational thing to me. I'm like, that's unbelievable. I wish
awesome.
I wish I had the money to buy custom bottles of champagne where I could get my enemies engraved in them. I don't know.
Trying to think of who my enemies are.
All right, well,
you know who
what do
you
think?
are out there.
Yeah, me too.